I believe that the biggest lie we've ever been told is that we're linear beings living a linear life. I know that we're dimensional beings living a dimensional life, and I think that this is an amazing time in history right now. I think we all signed up to be here at this particular moment. All the paradigms are breaking down. And so we started to realize that when people go from a narrow focus to an open focus, and when they begin to pay attention to that field, they stay present with it, they experience it, they become more aware of it. Moment by moment by moment, there'll come a moment where all of a sudden they'll begin to connect to it. Now, the hormones of stress create separation. There's me here and there's you there, and there's space and distance between us, and then there's me here, and then there's my future and my dreams way over there. And I got to drag my body through space to get to my dreams, and it's going to take time. And that's the world of Newtonian physics. And the more separation we have between 2 points of consciousness, the more distance we have between 2 points of consciousness, the more time it's going to take for me to get there. If I'm in Mexico City and I say I want to get to Dallas and I'm going to walk, well, I'm going to drag my body through space, and it's going to take me a long time to get there. 1 point of consciousness, Mexico City, the other point of consciousness, Dallas. My body moves through space, it takes time. Well, in the quantum, it's kind of opposite, because in this three-dimensional world, there's an infinite amount of space. Space is the commodity, and we experience time moving through space. But in the quantum, there's an infinite amount of time. Time is eternal. And if time is eternal in that realm, imagine if you had all the time in the world. You can get anything done you wanted to, right?
Yes.
It's only equal to your imagination. And so then, as you as a consciousness, as you go from a somebody to a nobody, as someone to no one, from something to nothing, from somewhere to nowhere, from sometime to no time, and you become pure consciousness, as our students begin to connect to that field, and they begin to pay attention to it and surrender to it and stay present with it and go deeper into it, their consciousness is moving closer to the consciousness of the unified field. And as you begin to move closer and closer to it, the signature of the unified field is oneness and wholeness, which means you experience less separation and you experience more wholeness. And if you feel more whole, you feel like you already have everything you want. And so you're no longer creating from duality or polarity or lack. And as you get closer and closer to that unified field, there's less separation between 2 points of consciousness, then there's less time, which means it starts happening in a shorter amount of time. So we started doing these week-long events because I realized, boy, after 4 days, people are connecting and having these amazing experiences. What would happen if we had them for a week? And that's what we're starting to see now, instantaneous, miraculous changes. And that's where we're at. I believe in this concept called information, the transformation. I now know, without a doubt, Humberto,
Yes.
if you give people sound scientific information, and science is the contemporary language of mysticism.
Correct.
It is.
Correct.
Science demystifies the mystical. And you combine a little quantum physics with a little neuroscience, a little neuroendocrinology, a little psychoneuroimmunology, a little epigenetics, a little brainwave technology. And people, as they're embracing that information, and it's current. Now, it's not enough to just listen to it, because you learn it, you make new connections in your brain. But then we ask our students to turn to the person next to them and explain it. If you can't explain it, it's not wired in your brain. So then they begin to build a model of understanding, firing and wiring, firing and wiring. And as they begin to make their brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, they're changing their mind. Mind is the brain in action. So if we keep reminding them of these models and they can explain it, they're installing the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for the experience. And the more they understand what they're doing and why, the how gets easier. So then, if I can set up the conditions in the environment immediately right afterwards, and nothing's left to conjecture, nothing's left to superstition, nothing's left to dogma.
Yes.
You understand exactly what you're doing and why. And you give the people the proper instruction, and they feel safe enough to do it. And I have 750 people or 1,000 people or 1,500 people, a community of people all doing it at the same time. A certain percentage of those people are going to get their behaviors to match their intentions and their actions equal to their thoughts. And when they do, they're going to have some type of transformation, a change in form. Well, if I could measure their transformation like we did, then I have more information to teach transformation the next time. And if I can measure that transformation, I have more information to teach transformation the next time. So all of a sudden you start closing the gap between knowledge and experience. So there's a momentum when you get a community of people together and they're not busy on their cell phones or their computers or taking care of their kids. They are focused, and they're focused on creating a new future. And after looking at 8,000 some odd brain scans, I can tell you that you are at your absolute best when you get beyond yourself, period. That is a fact. So you get all of a sudden now people starting to break through. And we start at 6 in the morning and we go to 6 in the evening or 7 in the evening. Nobody complains. It's fun. And some days we're up at 4 in the morning because that is when the brain chemistry is right for the mystical. And people show up because they want the mystical more than their sleep.
Yes.
So if we get a community of people doing this, and the first day, it's a little bit of a challenge to break past your emotions and your frustration and your habits and all the voices in your head. But if you keep going, all of a sudden, there's a momentum. And people just start letting go. And so in 4 days, well, Saturday or Sunday, the energy of the room was off the chart. People were standing up that had all kinds of amazing healings. And I thought, what if we had 3 more days of this? We could move mountains. And so I stopped doing the 4-day advance, stopped doing the measurements because we have tons of data, although we do some measurements here and there, and do the week-longs. And let's just go. And so now in the week-long events, after looking at all the data, I know that you can create heart coherence and brain coherence because I've seen your scan. So then I say, okay, let's do something really supernatural. Let's put people in conditions in the environment that would normally evoke fear, anxiety, normally would evoke exhaustion or some type of limited state. And in that moment, have them begin to, with their eyes open, create heart coherence and brain coherence and begin to make that change. And all of a sudden, people are, in these new week-longs, they're breaking through, because if you're standing on a pole that's, let's see, 15 meters, 13 meters in the air.
Really tall, really high.
And you are, strapped in, but you're standing on that pole and there's a trapeze behind you, or you're walking across a plank, and that other side is your future, and your legs are shaking and your heart is racing, you only got one of 2 choices. Either you're going to stop with your eyes open, work on creating coherence again, settling down and moving across. And we had people with MS, with lupus, we had people with Parkinson's disease walking across those planks. And let me tell you something. They got off those planks and they were not the same person. Because what happens with most people is that I believe that you learn the most about yourself and you learn the most about others when they're outside their comfort zone.
True.
Or when we're outside our comfort zone. So then all of this is like to get people to the point where they believe in themselves. And when you believe in yourself, you believe in possibility. And when you take a person who says, I don't think I can do that, and you say, well, why don't you just climb up and see how you do? And then they climb up, and then you say, why don't you just get up there? And, it's all safe, and it's, there's a ton of support.
But if you're afraid of heights, it freaks you out.
But if you go further than where you normally go, there's a release of energy.
Yes.
And that release of energy is free energy. That's available energy for you to create a new future. That's available energy to heal. So in these week-longs, we've had 2 so far. I'll show you some of the videos when we break here, and it's really powerful, really powerful. And to challenge people to that measure and to get them to believe in themselves, there's no greater drug.
Yeah.
There's just no greater feeling. And then imagine, you're up there and it's not competitive. Everybody is down there cheering you on and loving you.
Yeah, you're right.
You can do this. And, people in their 80s, do that. And then when it comes to the walking meditation, they heal their body in 1 hour, walking as their future self. I mean, it's just outstanding. So I'm super excited about it because I've stopped doing my progressive workshops. I've stopped doing the intensive workshops. I don't do keynotes very often unless I owe somebody a favor. I don't do conferences that much. My passion is to be with doers.
Like
I'm a
real
doer.
transformation.
Real transformation. Evidence. I mean, this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I'm so proud to say that the community of people that we have around the world, they do the work. They just do the work. They just wake up in the morning and they change their brain and body, and they get their heart open and they get in that state, and they expect the uncommon and the miraculous and the unknown to show up in their life, because why else are we doing this? You know, people think they want health, or they want wealth, or they want a new relationship, or they want love. It's not that. It's who you become in the process. Because every person that had a spontaneous remission, and I've interviewed so many of them in our work, they'll tell you that my disease was my greatest teacher. They'll tell you it wasn't my mother, it wasn't my father who was abusive, it wasn't my uncle, who was abusive. It's just who I became in the process. You can't take that away from a person, because it's not the wealth. It's you become the very thing. And so people are starting to wrap their mind around these concepts. And when you start understanding that, the only thing you want is the unknown. In stress, you run from the unknown. When your heart is open, you crave it. It's an adventure. And so people are evolving because of it, and they're doing the work. And we have the evidence to show that common people around the world are doing the uncommon. When you see somebody, and this is the power of numbers, and there's nothing like a story.
Yes.
You have witnessed people stand up with a diagnosis of breast cancer, of colon cancer, a diagnosis of peripheral neuropathy, a diagnosis of esophageal cancer. You watch them stand on the stage and tell their story of their own personal healing, and they don't look like a movie star or a sports figure. They're not all young. They're not all buffed. They're not all wealthy. And something happens that's innate in us. You watch that, and it's not like all glamorous. They had a lot of struggles. They had a lot of challenges. They lost their people in their life. They got really sick, and they kept going. And you hear how they did the work in spite of fear, self-doubt. You hear that they did the work in spite of feeling so sick that they couldn't do it, or there wasn't enough time. They never missed a day. And they stand up there and they say, I had no reason to be in love with life, but every day I wouldn't get up from my meditation until I was in love with life. And the disease is gone, and I have a great life right now. I'm in love with my life. And you watch that person tell the story. They're speaking to you about possibility. And you can't sit down and do the work and deny that it's the truth any longer. You now know it's the truth.
Yes.
And it's no longer like, oh, this isn't really for me, it doesn't really work. It's really like, what is it about me that's not making my way? What is it? What is the emotion? What is the unconscious belief? What is the program? And so, just like an infection spreads amongst the community and creates disease, I believe that health and wellness are as infectious as disease. And when you get a community of people together and they start popping, and that happens, the last 2 week longs, I called my staff on the stage to witness what I was witnessing. They were in tears. When you witness that, and you see what's possible, you begin to realize that we've all been hypnotized. All of this is to convince us that we're limited human beings, that we need something outside of us to make us feel better inside of us. And man, when you start grabbing onto this concept, that when the moment you start feeling no reason and you're doing it from inside of you, and you start seeing the effects outside of you, you'll believe you're more of the creator of your life than less of a victim in your life. Because you say to a person, why are you so sad? Why are you so unhappy? They'll say, I'm unhappy because of my ex-husband. I'm unhappy because of the job. And what you're basically saying is that your outer environment is controlling how you think and feel, which means you're a victim.
Yes.
To your outer environment. But when you're regulating internal states independent of the conditions in your external environment, and your environment starts to shift and change, then you're going to realize that, oh my God, I'm never going to react to that person again, because the moment I do, I just return back to my past. And all of a sudden, people start getting it, and they start spiraling out of their lives into new lives. And it's happening more and more, and it's happening in a shorter amount of time because people are feeling more connected. I believe that the biggest lie we've ever been told is that we're linear beings living a linear life. I know that we're dimensional beings living a dimensional life, and I think that this is an amazing time in history right now. I think we all signed up to be here at this particular moment. All the paradigms are breaking down, you know, the economies, the political structures, the religious structure, the educational structure, journalism, the environment, the medical model. All these things are collapsing because something greater has to come. And I believe that it's not one person. Mm-hmm. It's everybody. And I believe that if you get a group of people that are heart-centered, and we've done the research to show that in a room of 750 people, all going into an elevated state, opening their hearts, and having 40 people in the front of the room wearing heart rate monitors, and those people are sending the intent that the people in the front of the room, their lives be enriched, that their bodies be healed, that the mystical find them, that their dreams come true, that all of these people go into heart coherence at the exact same time, the exact same day, the exact same meditation. You see, we're connected by this invisible field called love, and I think that if you get enough people beginning to do that, and there's a morphic field that people can draw from, that 4-minute mile, mm-hmm. that people are waking up because information is so readily available, that all of a sudden I think the old paradigms are going to collapse, and we should never be afraid of the collapse of those paradigms, and we should not face them in fear or hostility or prejudice. That's what's created them in the first place.
Yes.
But when people really come together, I think our innate nature is to care for one another, and to love one another, and to be kind to one another. And so much of the world reminds us to not do that. So I think it's a great time to be alive. I hope in some measure, in some way, that I'm making a difference and contributing to the world. But I think a new consciousness is what I'm after.